Okay, so first, if we are adding integers with the same sign, so they're both positive or both negative, we're going to add the absolute value of the integers. So we're going to find the absolute value of 2, the absolute value of 5, add those together, and then use the common sign. So the absolute value of 2 and the absolute value of -2 are both 2. The absolute value of 5 and -5 are both 5. So either way, +2 plus +5 is +7. -2 plus -5 is -7. It's basically just the exact same thing as adding. You're just using whichever sign they both have. So, example, I've got -2 plus -4, and we can use a number line to check our answer. So we're going to add the absolute value of -2. The absolute value of -2 is 2. The absolute value of -4 is 4. So we're going to do 2 plus 4, which is 6. And then we're going to use the common sign, which is negative. So that's -6. And we can check this because if we start at 0 and go to -2, and then we add 4 more negatives. So we're going 1, 2, 3, 4 more in the negatives. And I'm sorry, trying to show that I end up at, and then it's not even on the screen. I end up at -6, okay? So I start at 0, I go to -2, and then I go 4 more negatives to get to -6. So then on your own, you're going to solve these 3. And then 2 numbers that are the same distance from 0, but on opposite sides of 0 are called opposites. For example, -3 and 3 are opposites. So those numbers, if we're adding together, will always give us 0. Okay, so that actually says that down here. Whoops. The sum of an integer and its opposite is 0. So anytime we are adding a number and its opposite, we get 0. A number and its opposite, we get 0. And then in algebra, we would say a plus -a. So any number plus its opposite is 0. Okay. And then if we're adding integers with different signs, we're going to subtract the lesser absolute value from the greater absolute value. Then use the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value. So like on here, 8 plus -10 is -2 because we are actually doing, so -10 has a bigger absolute value. So we're going to do 10 minus 8, which gives us 2. But then we're using the negative sign because the -10 had the greater absolute value. Okay, and same thing here. We're going to do 17 minus 13, and it gives us 4 because we're using the sign of the number with the greater absolute value. So for example, here I've got 5 plus -10. So the absolute value of 5 is less than the absolute value of -10. So we're going to subtract 5 from 10 and use the sign of -10. So we're going to do 10 minus 5, which is 5. But then because this is negative, we're saying -5. Okay. Same thing with finding -3 plus 7. The absolute value of 7 is greater than the absolute value of -3. So we're going to subtract 3 from 7. So we're going to do 7 minus 3. And we're going to use the sign of 7. So it's going to stay positive. 7 minus 3 is 4. So -3 plus 7 is +4. And then this last one, find -12 plus 12. The absolute value of -12 is equal to the absolute value of +12. So we're just going to subtract 12 from 12 and use the sign of 0. 0 is always 0. So 12 minus 12 is 0. Okay, and we can do that same thing if we are adding more than 2 integers. So the list shows 4 bank account transactions in July. Find the change C in the account balance and find the sum of the 4 transactions. So first we're going to write the sum, and then we're going to use the commutative property of addition to put all of our negative numbers together and all of our positive numbers together, because we can add in any order. So I'm going to change this to C is equal to negative 40 plus negative 50, because I'm adding negative 50, plus positive 50 plus 75. Okay. And then we're going to use the associative property of addition to rewrite this as C is equal to negative 40 plus negative 50 plus 50 plus 75. And negative 50 plus positive 50 gives me 0. So I've got C is equal to negative 40 plus 75. So then we're going to add negative 40 and 75 and do 70 plus negative 40. Okay. And then just like before, we're going to do the absolute value and subtract. So here we're actually doing 75 minus 40, which is 35. So the sum of the 4 transactions is $35. So after all of this, they were left with $35. So then there's a couple for you guys to do on your own, and you can check your answers on the GoFormative.